the billionaire who never begs, is begging now. She storms across the yacht deck, tears streaming, heels like gunshots. One more step, and she's gone forever. Welcome to Lord of Hearts, where stories hit hard, heal deep, and teach us what love actually costs. A woman in emerald silk storms across the yacht deck, heels slamming wood like gunshots. Auburn hair flies wild in the salt wind. Tears streak her face, but her eyes burn forward. She is finished. Behind her, Adrian Sterling, the billionaire who built an empire from nothing, breaks into a full sprint. Suit jacket flapping, tie askew, face twisted in panic. The man who never begs is begging now. Olivia. His voice cracks open, raw and desperate. Guests turn. Champagne glasses frozen halfway to lips. The quartet misses a beat. He shoves through the crowd, nearly tripping over his own polished shoes, chasing the one person who just walked out on everything they built. She hits the gangplank. He reaches her in 3 frantic strides, hand shooting out to catch hers before she disappears down to the dock, breath heaving, eyes wide with the kind of fear money can't fix. This is not a rehearsal. This is the moment a man worth billions realizes he is about to lose the only thing he can't replace. One careless laugh earlier that night. One failure to defend her. 1 second where he chose the room's approval over her heart. And now the untouchable Adrian Sterling is on his knees, figuratively, then literally, trying to undo the damage before she vanishes into the night. Everything he owns, every zero in his accounts, every headline with his name, none of it matters in this heartbeat. Only her. And whether she turns back. Stay with me. Because this chase across the deck wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything that really mattered. Have you ever felt that exact gut punch moment when someone you love chooses silence over standing up for you? One wrong laugh, one polite deflection. One time, they let someone else talk down to what matters most to you, and suddenly the whole relationship feels cracked open. Maybe it wasn't on a yacht with waves crashing below. Maybe it was at a dinner table when a family member dismissed your career choice. Maybe in a meeting where your ideas got brushed aside while others got applause. Maybe during a quiet argument at home when let's not make a scene felt more important than defending your heart. The sting is the same. You realize you've been shrinking parts of yourself to fit into their space. You've been hoping they'd see you, the real you, without you having to beg for it. And when they don't, the ache hits. Am I worth more than this? That's precisely where Olivia stood that night. She had spent months opening up, sharing her dreams on paper and in quiet moments, believing Adrian saw her worth beyond the role of the writer-girlfriend. Then, one careless chuckle from him, while another man reduced her passion to entertainment, cut straight through. It wasn't just an insult. It was proof he still valued the room's comfort over her dignity. She walked away because staying would have meant betraying herself. And Adrian, the man who never loses, suddenly faced the one loss he couldn't buy back. If you've ever walked out of a room, heart racing, wondering if love should cost your self-respect, if you've ever questioned whether real connection can survive when status and appearances keep winning, then this story is going to hit you hard. Because what unfolded on that deck wasn't just drama. It was the raw truth about what happens when someone finally wakes up to the cost of staying quiet. It was the moment a guarded heart learned that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the only way to keep what truly matters. The real problem wasn't the yacht. It wasn't the champagne, the chandeliers, or the billion-dollar view. The problem was a quiet, everyday betrayal, choosing the crowd's approval over the person standing right beside you. Adrian Sterling had spent his entire adult life winning, at business, at ambition, at control. He knew how to close deals, how to command rooms, how to keep everything perfectly in place. But when it came to love, he still played by the old rules: keep things smooth, avoid friction, protect the image. That one polite laugh, while another man belittled Olivia's passion for writing, exposed the truth. He froze. He deflected. He let the moment slide to keep the night perfect. And in doing so, he risked losing the woman who had taught him that perfection without honesty is just loneliness in expensive packaging. Olivia didn't storm out because she was dramatic. She left because she refused to keep shrinking herself to fit someone else's spotlight. She left because love should never ask you to silence your own voice. So the question hangs in the air like salt spray off the deck. What happens when a man who has everything suddenly faces the one thing he can't buy or fix with money? What happens when desperation forces him to run, not after power or profit, but after the chance to make it right? And what happens when the woman he's chasing finally sees whether he's willing to change, not just chase? That's the story you're about to step into. A love story wrapped in luxury, cracked open by one honest moment, and rebuilt stronger on the other side. A reminder that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or guest lists. It's measured in who you choose to defend when it counts. If you're ready for a tale that will make you laugh, ache, and maybe even rethink your own relationships, then welcome to Lord of Hearts. This channel exists to bring you stories like this, raw, uplifting, full of real-life lessons about love, growth, vulnerability, and second chances. We don't do fluff. We do heart. So if that chase across the deck got your pulse up, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to show this story to more people who need it. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had to walk away to protect your worth? Or have you been the one who finally ran to fix it? Share one word or one sentence. I read every single one. And if you want more stories that hit this deep, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Now let's go back 6 months earlier, to the quiet night when two very different worlds first collided. Adrian Sterling was born in a small town outside Indianapolis where winters bit hard and summers smelled of cut grass and distant rain. His mother worked double shifts at the local hospital, folding laundry and changing bedpans to keep the lights on. His father left when Adrian was 7, chasing a promise of better pay in Texas that never materialized. The house was quiet after that, too quiet. Adrian learned early that silence could mean safety or loneliness, depending on the day. By 12, he was fixing neighbors' broken radios and lawnmowers for pocket money. At 15, he taught himself coding on a second-hand desktop that wheezed every time it booted up. Lines of green text on a black screen became his escape. He didn't have friends who understood circuits or algorithms. He had lines of code that did exactly what he told them to do. No arguments, no disappointments, no walking away. High school ended fast. He skipped the senior prom to debug a program that tracked solar panel efficiency for a science fair project. The prototype won first place and a small scholarship, enough to get him to a state university on the edge of Chicago. There, he lived in a dorm room that smelled of instant noodles and ambition. Nights stretched into mornings as he built the first version of what would become Sterling Energy, software that optimized renewable power grids in real time, cutting waste and costs in ways utility companies had never bothered to calculate. Graduation came with a single job offer from a mid-tier firm in Silicon Valley that paid just enough to rent a studio apartment the size of his childhood garage. He took it, moved west, and started working 16-hour days. Colleagues noticed his focus. Investors noticed his numbers. Within 3 years, he left to start his own company in a rented space above a laundromat. The first round of funding arrived 6 months later, $2 million from a venture firm that saw dollar signs in clean energy. The growth was brutal and beautiful. Sterling Energy landed government contracts, partnered with major automakers, opened offices in Berlin and Shanghai. By 30, Adrian's net worth crossed 9 figures. The garage dream had become headlines. The Midwestern kid who electrified the future. Magazine covers showed him in sharp suits, standing beside sleek wind turbines, or beside the sleek lines of his first private jet. Yet every milestone felt hollow. The betrayals started small. Early CO founders who quietly sold their shares to competitors. A trusted CFO who funneled bonuses into offshore accounts before vanishing. Board members who smiled in meetings then leaked strategy to rivals. Each cut taught the same lesson: trust is expensive and rarely worth the price. Adrian responded the way he knew how. He built higher walls. Contracts grew tighter. NDAs thicker. Inner circles smaller. By 33, the only people who saw him without a polished mask were his assistant and the occasional date who lasted 3 dinners at most. Luxury arrived in waves. A penthouse in San Francisco with floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the bay. A beach house in Malibu where waves crashed 20 feet from the infinity pool. The yacht, Eternal Horizon, docked in Marina del Rey, 200 feet of polished teak and custom lighting, staffed year-round even when he barely used it. Invitations poured in, galas in New York, retreats in Aspen, charity auctions where people bid 6 figures on weekends at private islands. He attended most of them, smiled for photos, shook hands, collected business cards, went home alone. Nights were the hardest. After the last guest left or the helicopter touched down, he would stand at the penthouse window, city lights stretching below like scattered coins. He owned pieces of the skyline, office towers, data centers, patents, but none of it followed him to bed. He would pour a glass of single malt, sit in the dark, and feel the weight of everything he had built pressing against the emptiness inside. One memory kept returning. His mother's funeral 4 years earlier. She had died quietly in the same hospital where she once worked. Adrian flew back for the service. The church was half full, mostly old neighbors and a few cousins. No one from his new life came. No board members, no investors. He stood at the front pew in a black suit that cost more than her monthly rent used to be, and realized the empire he had spent his life constructing had not bought him a single person who truly mourned with him. After the burial, he drove alone to the old house. It was empty now, sold months before. He sat on the front steps until dusk, listening to crickets and remembering how she used to leave the porch light on when he stayed late at the library. She never asked for money, never bragged about his success. She only ever asked one question: "Are you happy, son?" He had always answered yes. The lie had felt easier than the truth. That question echoed louder now. Success without connection was not success. It was survival dressed up in expensive clothes. He had money to burn, influence to wield, a name that opened every door, but no one to share quiet mornings with, no one to call when the winds felt meaningless. The isolation was not dramatic. It was steady, constant, a low hum beneath every achievement. 6 months before the yacht party, Adrian accepted an invitation to a small literary fundraiser in Manhattan. The charity supported literacy programs for underserved schools, something his mother would have loved. He went alone, as always, expecting another polite evening of small talk and tax-deductible donations. He arrived late, slipped into the back row, and listened as a young woman stepped to the podium. Her voice was steady, warm, carrying stories of ordinary people chasing dreams while guarding their hearts. Something in her words caught him off guard. Not the polish of a professional speaker, but the honesty, the kind of honesty he had spent years avoiding. When the reading ended, he stayed in his seat a moment longer than necessary. Then he stood, adjusted his cufflinks, and walked toward the front of the room. He had no idea that simple step would change the rest of his life. Olivia Grant grew up in a narrow brownstone on a tree-lined street in Brooklyn, the kind of neighborhood where kids played stickball until the streetlights came on, and neighbors still borrowed sugar without asking. Her parents had moved from Manchester to New York in the late 90s. Her father a high school English teacher with a soft Lancashire accent, her mother a librarian who catalogued books the way some people catalogue memories. They raised 3 children in a home filled with second-hand paperbacks, mismatched mugs, and the constant low hum of conversation. Olivia was the middle child, quiet but observant. She preferred corners to center stage. At 8, she started keeping a notebook under her pillow, filling pages with stories about girls who found courage in small, ordinary acts. By 12, she was sneaking library books about writers who lived boldly: Virginia Woolf, Zora Neale Hurston, Toni Morrison. She underlined passages that made her chest ache, sentences that felt like someone had finally named what she carried inside. High school brought the first real test. Teachers praised her essays but warned her that creative writing isn't a career. Friends dreamed of law school, finance jobs, steady paths. Olivia dreamed of sentences that could make strangers feel less alone. She graduated with honors, accepted a partial scholarship to NYU for English literature, and moved into a shared apartment in Greenwich Village where the rent ate half her part-time barista paycheck. College sharpened her voice. She took workshops, stayed up until dawn revising short stories, learned to cut every unnecessary word. Professors told her her prose had heart, but lacked polish. Agents, when she finally mustered the courage to query, sent form rejections. Lovely writing. But the market is tough right now. Each email landed like a small bruise. She collected them in a folder labeled Proof, I'm Still Trying. After graduation, she found a tiny studio in Bed-Stuy, exposed brick, one window that looked out on a fire escape, rent she could barely afford. Mornings she wrote at a second-hand desk pushed against the wall. Afternoons, she worked freelance copy editing gigs or tutored high school students in essay structure. Evenings, she revised, always revising. Her stories centered on love, not the glossy, perfect kind sold in airports, but the messy human version. Characters who argued over grocery lists, who forgave slowly, who learned that closeness required showing the parts they usually hid. She believed vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was the only bridge strong enough to hold two people together. Art, she told herself, demanded the same honesty love did. Hide too much and the work rang hollow. 25 brought her first serious relationship. His name was Marcus, a graphic designer with quick smiles and big plans. They met at an open mic night in Williamsburg. He loved her stories, said they made him feel seen. For 2 years they shared takeout dinners on her futon, late-night talks about ambition, lazy Sundays where she read drafts aloud while he sketched beside her. She let him in completely, showed him the rejection folder, the late-night doubts, the fear that she might never be good enough. Then Marcus got a job offer in Los Angeles. The salary was life-changing. The move was non-negotiable. He asked her to come along, promised they'd figure out her writing career later. Olivia hesitated. She had finally started querying agents again. A small press had requested the full manuscript of her first novel. Leaving New York felt like abandoning the only city that had ever let her breathe as a writer. They fought. He accused her of choosing pages over people. She accused him of choosing opportunity over partnership. In the end, he left without her. The breakup wasn't explosive. It was quiet, final. He packed his things on a Tuesday. She helped him carry boxes to the curb. When the cab pulled away, she stood on the sidewalk until the taillights disappeared, then went back inside and cried until the sun came up. After that, she stopped dating for a long time. She told friends she was focused on the work. Truth was simpler. She was afraid. Afraid of opening up again, only to watch someone walk away when her dreams didn't fit their timeline. She poured the hurt into her writing instead. The novel she had been querying grew darker, richer. Characters who loved fiercely but learned to protect their own hearts first. Rejections kept coming. One agent wrote, "Strong voice, but too quiet for today's market." Another, "Beautiful prose, but readers want more drama." Olivia read each one, made notes, revised again. She started a small Substack where she shared essays about creativity and resilience. A few hundred subscribers trickled in, mostly other writers, a handful of readers who said her words helped them keep going. It wasn't much, but it was hers. By 28, she had finished the second draft of her debut novel, a story about a woman who rebuilds her life after betrayal by choosing honesty over safety. She queried 20 more agents. 3 asked for partials. None offered representation. She kept writing anyway. Mornings at the same desk. Coffee gone cold. Fingers moving across keys even when doubt whispered she should stop. She told herself the struggle was part of the craft. Vulnerability on the page built muscle, resilience, clarity, truth, the same muscle she would need if love ever came back into her life. She wasn't looking for it, but she wasn't closed to it either. She simply refused to shrink again. 6 months before the yacht party, Olivia accepted an invitation to read at a small literary fundraiser in Manhattan. The event supported after-school writing programs for kids in underserved neighborhoods, something close to her heart. She wore a simple navy dress, carried her notebook like a shield, and stepped to the podium with steady hands. She read an excerpt about a character who finally admits what she wants, even when the admission risks everything. Her voice carried across the quiet room. Soft, sure, honest. When she finished, applause was warm, genuine. She stepped down, exhaled, and thought maybe, just maybe, the words were starting to find their people. In the back row, a man in a dark suit stayed seated longer than the others. He watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Curiosity, recognition, something unguarded. Then he stood, straightened his cufflinks, and walked toward her. Olivia had no way of knowing that single walk would rewrite both their stories. If you've ever felt dismissed for pursuing your passion, told it's just a hobby, or that you should choose something practical, drop a heart in the comments right now and tell me one sentence about your dream. Let's support each other. Your words matter, even when the world hasn't caught up yet. The Manhattan Literary Fundraiser took place in a modest community hall on the Upper West Side, exposed brick walls, rows of folding chairs, a small stage lit by 2 soft spotlights, no red carpets, no velvet ropes, just a banner that read words for tomorrow, and a table near the door stacked with donated books and sign-up sheets for volunteer tutors. About 80 people filled the seats, teachers, students, local writers, a few donors in casual blazers. The air carried the faint scent of coffee from the back room and the quiet buzz of anticipation. Olivia stepped to the podium at 7:42 p.m. She wore the navy dress she had chosen 3 days earlier, simple enough not to draw attention to herself, strong enough to feel like armor. Her notebook rested open on the stand. She cleared her throat once, glanced at the faces looking up at her, and began. She read for 12 minutes, an excerpt from the 3rd chapter of her novel. The scene followed a woman sitting alone on a park bench after a long day, finally admitting to herself that she wanted more than safety and love. Olivia's voice stayed even, letting the words carry their own weight. She paused at the right moments, let silence do its work. When she reached the final line, she looked up at the sky and decided the risk of being seen was worth more than the comfort of staying hidden. The room held its breath for a beat before applause broke out. Warm, sincere, the kind that lingers. She closed the notebook, offered a small smile, and stepped down. Her hands were steady, but her pulse raced. Readings always left her feeling exposed, as though she had handed strangers a piece of her ribcage and asked them not to break it. Adrian had arrived 10 minutes late, slipping into the back row during the previous reader's introduction. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, sleeves rolled once at the cuffs, a small concession to the casual setting. He had come for the charity, not the readings, but something in Olivia's delivery held him in place. Her words didn't shout, they arrived quietly and stayed. When she finished, he didn't clap right away. He watched her walk off the stage, notebook clutched to her chest, and felt a pull he couldn't name. After the program ended, people mingled near the refreshment table. Olivia stood by a window, accepting compliments from 2 older women who ran a book club in Queens. She thanked them, answered questions about her process, kept the conversation light. She was used to this part, gracious, brief, already mentally back at her desk planning tomorrow's revisions. Adrian waited until the small crowd around her thinned. He approached with the careful step of someone entering unfamiliar territory. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was low, measured. "That was powerful. The way you wrote about choosing to be seen. It felt true." Olivia turned. Up close he was taller than she expected. Dark hair slightly tousled from the evening wind. Eyes sharp but unguarded in that moment. "Thank you," she said. "It's the hardest part to get right on the page, making honesty feel earned instead of forced." They talked. At first about the excerpt, why she chose that scene, how long it took to revise the dialogue. Then the conversation shifted. He asked about her influences. She mentioned a few authors, then paused. "What brought you here tonight?" He told her about his mother, the literacy programs she had volunteered for back in Indiana, how the charity reminded him of her. The admission came out quieter than he intended. Olivia listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said simply, "That's a good reason to show up." They moved to a quieter corner near the coat rack. The room emptied slowly. Someone turned off the main lights, leaving only the wall sconces and the glow from the street outside. Neither of them noticed the time passing. He asked about her novel. She asked about his work. He described sterling energy in broad strokes, sustainable grids, global impact, without sounding like a pitch. She listened, then said, "It sounds like you built something that changes lives." That's not small. He looked at her then, really looked, and felt the ground shift under him. No one had ever phrased his success that way. Not as conquest, not as wealth, but as lives touched. They left the hall together at 10:17 p.m. The sidewalk was cool, streetlights casting long pools of yellow. He offered to walk her to the subway. She accepted. They headed south along Broadway, steps unhurried. Conversation flowed easily now. Childhood stories, favorite books, the small fears most people keep private. He admitted he hadn't read fiction seriously since college. She admitted she sometimes worried her stories were too quiet for the world's noise. At the subway entrance, she stopped. "This is me," she said. He hesitated. "Can I see you again? Coffee, maybe. No agenda. Just talk." She studied him for a second, searching for pretense, finding none. "I'd like that." They exchanged numbers. He watched her descend the stairs until she disappeared around the turn. Then he stood there a moment longer, hands in his pockets, feeling something unfamiliar, possibility without pressure. Their first coffee happened 4 days later at a small place in Chelsea. Mid-afternoon, no crowds. She arrived with her notebook. He arrived with nothing but his phone on silent. They sat at a corner table by the window. 2 hours passed in minutes. She told him about the rejections that still stung. He told her about the board meeting where he had to fire a friend who had crossed lines. Both admissions felt like dropping weight they had carried alone. After that came walks. Central Park on a Saturday, when leaves were turning gold. The High Line at dusk, when the city lights began to flicker on. Brooklyn Bridge one evening, when fog rolled in from the harbor. Each time they shared more, small vulnerabilities first, then deeper ones. He confessed the nights he sat alone in his penthouse, wondering if success had cost him the ability to connect. She confessed the fear that letting someone close again would mean losing the independence she had fought to keep. The first touch came naturally. On the bridge, wind sharp against their faces, he brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into the gesture for a heartbeat. Later, on a bench overlooking the East River, their hands found each other, fingers lacing slowly, testing, then holding. No rush, no performance. Just the quiet certainty that this felt right. Intimacy grew in layers. A shared umbrella during sudden rain on Bleecker Street. Her head resting on his shoulder during a late movie in his living room. His arm around her waist as they walked home. Each moment carried weight because it was chosen, not assumed. They talked about boundaries, what they needed, what they feared. Honesty became the foundation. No games, no masks. When doubts surfaced, they named them out loud. One evening, 3 weeks after the fundraiser, they sat on the steps of her brownstone after dinner. Streetlights hummed overhead. She turned to him. "I'm scared," she said. "Not of you. Of how much I already care." He took her hand. "I'm scared too. I've spent years keeping people at arm's length. You make me want to close the distance." They kissed then, slow, deliberate, the kind of kiss that says more than words can hold. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "We take this at our pace," she whispered. He nodded. Our pace. True intimacy, they were learning, doesn't arrive in grand gestures. It starts with honesty, admitting the fears, sharing the scars, choosing each other day after day without pretense. That choice builds trust stronger than any contract or promise. It creates space where both people can breathe fully, be fully seen, and still feel safe. Over the next months, their worlds began to overlap in small, deliberate ways. He visited her tiny studio, sat on the edge of her bed while she read new pages aloud. She joined him for a quiet dinner at his penthouse. No staff, just the two of them cooking pasta and laughing when the sauce splattered. They learned each other's rhythms, her need for morning silence, his habit of pacing when thinking through problems. They respected the differences instead of trying to erase them. The spark that started in a community hall had grown into something steady, warm, real. And yet, Even in those early months, faint shadows lingered, questions neither had voiced yet, about how two such different lives could keep moving forward together. Those questions would surface later. For now, though, they held tight to the honesty that had brought them this far. The first coastal escape happened 4 months after their initial meeting, on a crisp October weekend when New York started to feel too loud. Adrian suggested a drive north. No private jet, no staff, just his black SUV, a playlist Olivia curated, and 2 overnight bags in the trunk. They left Friday afternoon, windows down, autumn air rushing in, as they crossed the George Washington Bridge and headed toward the Connecticut shoreline. He had rented a small cedar-shingled cottage on a private stretch of beach in Madison. No mansion, no gated estate, just a single-story house with wide windows facing Long Island Sound, a stone fireplace, and a wraparound porch that creaked underfoot. When they arrived, the sun was already low, painting the water copper. Olivia stepped out first, inhaled deeply, and turned to him with a smile that made his chest tighten. "This feels like breathing again," she said. Inside, the house smelled of pine and sea salt. They unpacked slowly, no hurry. Adrian built a fire, while Olivia opened a bottle of red he had brought from a vineyard they passed on the way. She poured 2 glasses, handed him one, and they sat on the rug in front of the hearth. Flames snapped softly. She pulled out her notebook, the latest draft of a short story she had been refining, and asked if he wanted to hear it. He nodded, leaning back against the couch, legs stretched toward the warmth. She read in the firelight, voice low and steady, pausing when a sentence needed space. The story followed a man who had spent years collecting achievements until he realized he had no one to share them with. When she finished, silence settled comfortably between them. Adrian reached over, brushed his thumb across her knuckles. "You write the things I've never said out loud," he told her. That night, they fell asleep, tangled under a thick quilt, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. No rush toward anything more. Just the simple act of holding each other through the dark hours. For Adrian, it was the first time in years he woke without immediately reaching for his phone. He lay still, listening to her steady breathing, feeling the rise and fall of her ribs against his side, and understood what presence actually meant, not filling silence, but resting in it. Weekends like that became their rhythm. A cabin in the Berkshires one November, snow dusting the pines. They hiked narrow trails during the day, cheeks flushed from cold, then returned to read by lantern light. Olivia would curl against him on the sofa, blanket draped over both of them, reading drafts while he traced slow circles on her arm. Sometimes she stopped mid-sentence to ask what he thought. He answered honestly, praised what moved him, questioned what felt unclear. She listened without defensiveness. His feedback sharpened her work. Her trust in his opinion deepened his own sense of worth beyond balance sheets. Slow dances started in the city. One rainy Thursday evening in his penthouse, she put on an old jazz record she found in a thrift shop. The needle dropped, saxophone notes filled the room. She held out her hand. He took it. They moved in a small circle on the hardwood floor, bare feet brushing, bodies close enough to feel each other's heartbeat. No audience, no expectation. Just the music and the quiet decision to stay in the moment. Physical closeness arrived gradually, always deliberate. A hand on the small of her back as they walked through a crowded market. Fingers threading together during a long drive, her legs draped over his lap, while they watched the sunset from the porch of another rented house. Kisses deepened over time, first soft and exploratory, then longer, hungrier, but never rushed. One night in early December, after a day of wandering Greenwich Village bookshops, they returned to her studio. She lit candles on the windowsill. He pulled her close on the narrow bed. Clothes came off slowly, hands learning curves and scars, mouths mapping skin with care. When they finally joined, it felt like completion rather than conquest. Two people choosing each other completely, no barriers left. These moments healed them in ways neither had anticipated. For Adrian, the change was internal and profound. He had spent decades measuring value in output, deals closed, shares rising, headlines earned. Presence was foreign territory. Yet here, sitting by firelight while Olivia read aloud, or lying awake listening to rain on a tin roof with her asleep beside him, he discovered that doing nothing productive could feel more meaningful than any boardroom victory. He began leaving his phone in another room during their time together. Meetings got shorter, weekends became non-negotiable. He learned that showing up fully, without agenda, without checking for the next task, built trust stronger than any contract he had ever signed. Olivia found healing in the support she received. Past relationships had demanded she dim her ambition to keep peace. Marcus had seen her writing as a charming hobby until it conflicted with his plans. With Adrian, the opposite happened. He asked questions about her characters, remembered plot details from weeks earlier, celebrated small wins, a new agent request, a positive rejection that offered useful notes. When doubt crept in, he didn't fix it, he sat with it. "Your voice matters," he would say. "Keep using it." That steady belief let her write bolder, riskier pages. She learned that real support doesn't erase your dreams, it amplifies them. Joy arrived in waves. Laughter over burnt toast in a rented kitchen. Silly arguments about who made better coffee. The way he would catch her eye across a room and smile like they shared a secret. The quiet thrill of waking up beside someone who chose her again every morning. Trust built brick by brick, through honest conversations after hard days, through apologies when one of them misstepped, through the simple habit of checking in. "How are you really feeling?" One weekend in January, they drove to a secluded cabin in the Catskills. Snow fell thick and steady outside. Inside, the fire roared. They spent the afternoon wrapped in blankets on the couch, her reading a new chapter while he listened with his head in her lap. When she finished, he pulled her down beside him, kissed her forehead, then her mouth, slow and deep. "I've never felt this safe with anyone," he whispered against her skin. She traced his jaw with her fingertips. "Me neither." They made love in front of the fire that night, gentle at first, then urgent, bodies moving in rhythm with the crackling logs. Afterward, they lay tangled, sweat cooling, hearts slowing together. No words needed. Just the quiet certainty that this was home. Emotional highs came in ordinary moments too. A shared glance during a crowded dinner party when they both knew they'd rather be alone. Her surprising him with tickets to a small jazz club on his birthday. Him leaving a first-edition copy of one of her favorite novels on her pillow with a note, "Your words changed me. Keep writing them." Each gesture reinforced the same truth. Love, when built on honesty, creates space for both people to grow without losing themselves. By spring, their bond felt solid, tested by small conflicts and repaired through open talk. They still lived in separate homes, her studio in Bed-Stuy, his penthouse downtown. But nights together grew more frequent. Weekends alternated between city simplicity and coastal quiet. The intimacy they shared wasn't flashy. It was steady, warm, rooted in daily choices to show up, listen, and stay. Pause right here. If this reminds you of a love that changed you, smash that like button and share one word that describes real connection below. Let's fill the comments with the words that matter most. As months passed, the differences in their worlds, once so stark, began to soften at the edges. He invited her to quieter events where conversation mattered more than status. She brought him to Brooklyn readings and late-night diners. They navigated the overlap with care, always returning to the foundation they had built. Honesty first, presence always, support without strings. Yet even in this season of tenderness, faint questions lingered beneath the surface. How long could two such different lives keep merging without friction? What would happen when the demands of his empire pulled harder or her rejections piled higher? Those answers would come soon enough. For now, though, they held each other close, letting the joy of these tender beginnings carry them forward. Spring turned to summer, and the easy rhythm they had built began to feel the first strain. Adrian's calendar, once flexible enough to accommodate long weekends away, started filling with obligations he couldn't delegate. A major investor summit in Singapore required his presence. A climate policy roundtable in Washington demanded FaceTime. Board meetings multiplied as Sterling Energy prepared for its next public offering. He still carved out time for Olivia, dinners when he flew back early, quiet evenings in her studio. But the gaps between those moments grew wider. The first visible crack appeared at a charity gala in late June. Adrian had been invited as a keynote speaker. The event honored renewable energy pioneers and raised funds for urban green spaces. He asked Olivia to join him. "It's important to me that you're there," he said over breakfast one morning. "Not as arm candy, as my partner. These people respect what you do. Some of them even read literary journals. You might make connections." Olivia agreed, partly because she wanted to support him, partly because she was curious about this side of his life. She bought a deep burgundy gown from a small designer in Brooklyn, elegant but understated. When they arrived at the venue, a glass-walled ballroom overlooking the Hudson, the room hummed with power. Men in tuxedos, women in sequins, waiters gliding with trays of caviar and vintage champagne. Adrian moved through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing her as Olivia Grant, the novelist whose work is going to change how people see relationships. Heads turned. Compliments followed. She smiled, thanked people, answered questions about her manuscript. But as the night wore on, the conversations shifted. Investors asked about market projections. Politicians discussed policy incentives. Philanthropists compared vacation homes. Olivia found herself nodding politely while topics drifted further from anything she cared about. At one point, a hedge fund manager leaned in and asked, "So, what's it like dating a billionaire? Must be nice to have the pressure off your writing career." The question was light, meant as a joke. Adrian laughed politely, too politely, and changed the subject. Olivia felt the words land like a slap. She excused herself to the restroom, stood in front of the mirror for a full minute, breathing slowly, reminding herself it was one comment. When she returned, Adrian was deep in discussion with 3 board members. He glanced over, smiled, reached for her hand. She let him take it, but the warmth she usually felt was dimmed. On the drive home, she stayed quiet. He noticed. "Everything okay?" She waited until they were inside his penthouse. "That man asked if dating you took the pressure off my career. You laughed. I was trying to keep things smooth. It wasn't worth starting an argument." It wasn't about starting an argument. It was about not letting someone reduce me to a kept woman. You could have said something, anything, that showed you see me as more than that. Adrian rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't want to make a scene. These events are delicate. One wrong word and deals fall apart." She looked at him steadily. "And one wrong silence makes me feel invisible." They talked it out that night. Long, honest, exhausting. He apologized. She accepted. But the moments stayed with her, a small weight she carried into the next weeks. More invitations followed. A private dinner at a tech mogul's Hamptons estate. A weekend retreat in Aspen for thought leaders. Each time Adrian asked her to come, framing it as an opportunity for her networking, for them to share experiences. Each time she went, dressed appropriately, smiled through small talk, and returned home feeling a little more like a guest in his world than a partner in their life. The gestures started to feel heavier. He booked her a writing retreat in the Adirondacks, 2 weeks in a luxury cabin with a private chef and ocean views. "So you can focus without distractions," he explained. She thanked him, but inside she felt a twist. The cabin was beautiful, the solitude perfect for writing, yet it also felt like he was trying to solve her career struggles with money instead of belief. When she gently said as much, he looked hurt. "I'm trying to make things easier for you. I know, but easier isn't always what I need. I need to know you believe I can do this on my own terms." He nodded, promised to listen better. Yet the pattern repeated. A rare first-edition set of her favorite authors arrived at her door. A quiet table at a Michelin-starred restaurant for her birthday. Each gift thoughtful, each one carrying an unspoken question, "Is this enough? Am I doing this right?" Olivia began to notice how often she adjusted herself at his events. She spoke softer, laughed at jokes she didn't find funny, avoided mentioning her latest rejection because it felt out of place among stories of 9-figure exits. She told herself it was compromise. Love required flexibility, but the compromises stacked up. Her writing sessions grew shorter. She spent more energy preparing for his world than tending her own. Adrian felt the shift too. He saw the light in her eyes dim when another high-profile weekend was announced. He caught the way she hesitated before accepting invitations. Fear crept in, not the sharp panic of losing a deal, but the slow dread of losing her. He had spent years building walls to protect himself from betrayal. Now those same walls threatened to keep her out. He started overcompensating. More gifts, more trips, more assurances that she was his priority. The gestures came from love, but they landed like pressure. One August evening, they argued in her studio. She had just received another rejection, this one kinder, with detailed feedback, but still a no. She was pacing, frustrated. He sat on the edge of her bed, watching. "I could call my friend at the agency," he offered. "He knows people. One conversation." "No." Her voice was firm. "I don't want that. I want to earn it. I'm not trying to buy your success. I'm trying to help. Helping feels like fixing me, like I'm broken because I'm not there yet." He stood. "That's not what I think. I just hate seeing you hurt." "Then sit with the hurt instead of trying to erase it." "That's what I need." Silence stretched. He stepped closer, took her hands. "I'm scared, Olivia. Scared that if I don't do enough, you'll realize you're better off without all this noise." She looked up at him. "The noise isn't the problem. The fear is. You're afraid I'll leave if you don't perform perfectly. I'm afraid I'll disappear if I keep bending to fit your life." They stood there, foreheads touching, breathing each other in. No easy resolution. Just the raw acknowledgement that love was asking them both to change, not into someone else, but into fuller versions of themselves. Frustration built quietly. Olivia cancelled a weekend trip to his beach house, saying she needed time to write. Adrian accepted it, but spent the days alone, staring at the ocean, wondering if he was pushing her away. Doubt settled in his chest. Was he capable of the kind of partnership she deserved? Could he loosen his grip on control without everything falling apart? She felt her own doubts. Late nights at her desk, staring at a blinking cursor, she asked herself if she was asking too much. Was it fair to expect him to step away from the empire he had bled for? Yet every time she pictured shrinking herself again, softening her edges, quieting her voice, the answer came clear: no. She refused to trade authenticity for comfort. Emotional lows arrived in waves. A tense dinner where conversation stayed surface level. A phone call cut short because his plane was boarding. A weekend when she stayed in Brooklyn and he stayed in the city, both pretending work demanded it. Each separation left a small bruise. The stakes rose with every avoided conversation. Would authenticity win, or would the weight of two worlds pull them apart? Love, they were learning, doesn't survive on chemistry alone. It requires mutual growth, two people willing to stretch toward each other without demanding the other shrink. Conformity kills connection. Only honest expansion keeps it alive. By late September, the tension had thickened into something neither could ignore. Adrian had a major product launch approaching, a new battery technology that could redefine energy storage. The pressure was immense. Olivia's manuscript was nearing completion. She had a meeting with a small press that had shown interest. Both stood on the edge of breakthroughs in their separate worlds, yet the distance between those worlds felt wider than ever. One rainy Thursday, they met at a quiet cafe near her neighborhood. No gala, no investors, just coffee and honesty. They sat at a corner table, hands clasped across the wood. "I don't want to lose you," he said. "I don't want to lose myself," she answered. They talked for hours, about fears, about needs, about the life they wanted together. No grand promises. Just the commitment to keep choosing growth over comfort, honesty over ease. The cracks were real. The weight was heavy. But in that cafe, under the hum of rain on the windows, they chose to face it together. The real test, though, was still coming. The final days of September carried a fragile tension that neither Adrian nor Olivia named aloud. The IPO roadshow in London had ended with handshakes and promising term sheets, but Adrian returned exhausted, eyes shadowed from red-eye flights and endless slide decks. Olivia's manuscript, now in its polished third draft, waited on her desk like a held breath. Her meeting with the small press was set for Monday, just 3 days away. She felt the familiar mix of nerves and hope. Yet the excitement stayed muted. The space between them had grown too crowded with unsaid things. Adrian proposed the yacht party on Thursday evening. They were eating take-out Thai at her small kitchen table. Pad see ew for her, green curry for him. The studio smelled of lemongrass and paper. "It's my annual gathering on the eternal horizon," he said, setting down his fork. "Nothing formal. A few friends, some colleagues who've become friends, a handful of investors I actually like. No presentations, no deals on the table. We can slip out early if it feels off." Olivia pushed noodles around her plate. Memories flickered, the gala where she had felt reduced to decoration, the Aspen retreat where conversations never circled back to her work, the quiet dinners where she had smiled through topics that left her cold. But she also remembered the rainy cafe, the way he had held her hands and promised change, the way she had promised to keep showing up. "One night," she agreed slowly, "for us. Not for the room." He leaned across the table, kissed her knuckles. "Thank you. I mean it." Friday morning she woke early. Sunlight slanted through the fire escape window onto her desk. She made coffee, sat with her notebook, tried to write. Words wouldn't come. Instead, she stared at the emerald gown hanging on the closet door, the one she had worn only once to a quiet dinner months earlier. It felt right for tonight, elegant but not ostentatious, a reminder of who she was before his world started pulling at her edges. Adrian picked her up at 5 p.m. He wore a charcoal suit, open collar, sleeves rolled to the forearms. She stepped out in the gown, hair loose over her shoulders. He paused on the sidewalk, eyes softening. "You take my breath away," he said, pulling her into a slow embrace. "I know this isn't your favorite scene. Thank you for coming with me." The drive to Marina del Rey passed in easy quiet. Windows cracked, ocean scent drifting in. Traffic thinned as they neared the water. The eternal horizon loomed at the end of the long dock, 200 feet of polished white hull and multiple teak decks, lit from below by subtle underwater LEDs that turned the surrounding water turquoise. Crew members in crisp white stood at attention along the gangplank. Sunset spilled across the sky in broad strokes of peach, rose, and deepening violet. The sea mirrored it in fractured gold. As they boarded, the gentle rock of the yacht met their steps. A string quartet on the upper deck began a soft rendition of a Bach air, violin and cello weaving together over the low hum of waves. Fresh orchids in tall vases lined the railings, their scent mingled with salt air and faint traces of grilled seafood from the galley. Adrian's hand found the small of her back again, light, reassuring, as they ascended to the main deck. 60 or so guests already circulated, tech founders in open-collared shirts, venture partners in tailored blazers, a scattering of artists and foundation heads Adrian had collected over years. Champagne flowed on silver trays, laughter rose in easy waves. A long buffet table near the stern displayed chilled lobster tails, caviar on blinis, oysters on ice, and delicate gold-flecked macarons. 2 infinity pools, one fore, one aft, glowed soft blue, their edges blending into the darkening sea. Marble accents caught the last sunlight. Crystal chandeliers swayed overhead, scattering light like falling stars. Adrian guided her through the crowd with quiet confidence. "This is Olivia Grant," he said to each small group, voice warm. "My partner, and a novelist whose work is going to matter." Responses came genuine. A foundation director asked about her themes. An artist whose work hung in Adrian's penthouse promised to read her manuscript. For the first quarter hour the evening felt almost right. Adrian stayed close. Conversations circled back to her writing. No one dismissed her presence. Then, Harlan Reed stepped aboard. Harlan moved like he owned the water itself. Silver hair swept back, broad shoulders under a navy blazer, glass already in hand. His company chased consumer-facing green gadgets, theirs built the infrastructure underneath. They had sparred at conferences for years, sharp but civil. Harlan spotted them near the starboard rail, strode over with the easy grin of a man who rarely heard no. "Adrian Sterling, king of the grid," Harlan called, clapping Adrian's shoulder hard enough to make the champagne in Adrian's glass slosh. His gaze shifted to Olivia. And this must be the famous writer-girlfriend everyone's whispering about. Keeping our boy distracted from spreadsheets, I hope? Olivia extended her hand. Olivia Grant. Pleasure. Harlan shook it, eyes twinkling. So tell me, what do you write? Steamy romance to spice up those late board meetings? Self-help for billionaires with too much time? Adrian laughed. Brief, habitual, the same quick deflection he had used before. Harlan, give it a rest. Olivia's finishing a novel that's going to hit hard. Serious work. Harlan raised his glass in mock salute. Serious, sure. Writing's adorable. Keeps the evenings lively. But come on. In circles like this, it's the story that sells that counts. Numbers talk louder than pages, right? The quip landed like a slap wrapped in velvet. Olivia felt her face heat. She waited, breath held, for Adrian to step forward, to say something unmistakable. He didn't. He smiled again, thinner, tighter, then pivoted the talk to Harlan's latest product launch. Olivia stood motionless for 3 heartbeats, then murmured "excuse me" and turned away. She threaded through guests, past the quartet's mournful cello, up the curved staircase to the upper deck. Fewer people here, couples murmuring at rails, a few solo smokers exhaling into the dusk. She found a secluded spot near the bow, gripped the smooth teak railing until her knuckles ached. The ocean rolled black beyond the yacht's glow. Waves hit the hull in rhythmic thuds. Tears arrived without warning, hot tracks down her cheeks. She swiped at them angrily, furious at the vulnerability, more furious at the moment that triggered it. Adrian noticed her absence almost immediately. He scanned faces, excused himself mid-sentence from a conversation about supply chains, took the stairs 2 at a time. He found her alone, back rigid, staring into the dark water. Olivia. She kept her eyes forward. You laughed. Again. Just like the gala. He stopped a pace behind her. I was trying to diffuse. Keep the peace. I know the script. She turned then, eyes shining. But your peace costs me every time. In rooms full of people whose opinion matters to you, I become the easy joke. The cute side piece. Adrian leaned on the rail beside her, hands clasped to keep from reaching out too soon. I froze. Confrontation in those settings. One wrong tone, and partnerships unravel. I've watched deals die over less, and I've watched parts of myself die, trying to stay quiet in those settings. Her voice trembled. I thought we'd moved past this. I thought that talk in the cafe meant something. It did. It does. He faced her fully. But habits from years of protecting the empire don't vanish overnight. I'm still learning how to choose you first, over the room, over the optics. Tears spilled again. Choosing me means shutting down a quip that reduces my life's work to adorable. It means not laughing along to keep things smooth. It means standing beside the real me, not the version that doesn't rock the boat. The yacht swayed on a larger wave. Chandeliers tinkled overhead. Violin notes drifted up thin and fragile. Laughter floated from below, oblivious, carefree. The luxury surrounding them, the glowing pools, the marble, the endless polished wood, felt suddenly hollow, a beautiful cage. Adrian's jaw tightened. You're right. I should have said, her writing isn't entertainment, it's the truest thing in my life. I should have walked away with you. I'm sorry. Truly. Olivia wiped her cheeks. Sorry is a start, but why stop at sorry every time? Because I'm scared. The admission came raw. Scared that if I push back too hard, the world I built falls apart. Scared that without it, I'm nothing you'd want. She met his eyes. You think I'm here for the empire, for the yacht? I'm here for you, the man who listens to my drafts, who dances in empty rooms, who holds me through doubt. But that man disappears when Harlan or anyone else walks in. Guests nearby had quieted, sensing the intensity. A couple drifted away politely. The quartet played on, notes distant against the wind. Adrian swallowed. I don't want to disappear anymore. I want to be the man who chooses you, every time in every room. Olivia's breath hitched. Then show me, not tomorrow, not next week. Right now. He looked at her, really looked, then sank to one knee on the teak deck. The wood was cool through his trousers. No grand flourish, just quiet resolve. I built walls to stay safe. They kept me isolated. You tore them down with honesty I didn't know I needed. Your words, your heart, your refusal to shrink. You've shown me what real strength looks like. I love you, all of you. The writer who fights for every sentence, the woman who calls me on my fear. I'm not losing that because I'm too afraid to speak up. He held her gaze. If another Harlan shows up tomorrow, I stand with you. I speak for you. I choose you. No more polite deflections. No more freezing. You come first, always. Tears streamed freely now. Olivia knelt too, bringing their faces level. Love demands growth. I've bent too far trying to disappear into your world. You've hidden too long trying to protect yours. We both stop tonight. He nodded, voice rough. We stop. She reached out, fingers tracing his jaw. Then stand with me. Not for the guests watching, not for show. For us. He rose, drew her up. They embraced, fierce trembling, bodies pressed close amid the soft deck lights and the vast dark sea. Guests watched from afar, murmurs rippling. The quartet's melody floated on, unbroken. Forgiveness sparked in that moment. Trust would need rebuilding, step by careful step. The breaking point had come, and rather than shatter them, it had shattered the masks they both still wore. The night was far from over. What unfolded next would test whether words could become action, whether love could survive the weight of truth laid bare. The embrace on the upper deck lasted only seconds, long enough for Olivia to feel Adrian's heartbeat hammering against hers, long enough for the salt wind to dry the last of her tears. But the quiet that followed felt heavier than any argument. Guests below continued their conversations, unaware that the night's center had shifted. The quartet played a slow waltz now. Violins rose and fell like distant waves. Olivia stepped back first, searching his face in the dim glow of the deck lights. I believe you want to change, she said quietly. But wanting isn't the same as doing. I've heard promises before. I need to see them. Adrian nodded once. Then let me show you. Right now. He took her hand again, gentle but firm, and led her down the staircase to the main deck. Heads turned as they passed, whispers followed. Harlan Reed stood near the buffet table, mid-laugh with two investors. When he saw them approaching, his grin faltered. Adrian stopped directly in front of him. The music seemed to fade for Olivia. The ocean's low roar grew louder in her ears. Harlan, Adrian said, voice steady and clear enough to carry. Earlier you called Olivia's work adorable. You reduced years of her life to a punchline. That stops here. Harlan blinked, glass halfway to his lips. Adrian, come on. It was a joke. Lighten up. It wasn't funny. Her writing isn't entertainment for your amusement. It's the most honest, courageous thing I know. She pours her soul into every page while most of us hide behind spreadsheets and titles. If you can't respect that, keep my name out of your mouth when you talk about her. The words landed sharp and final. Harlan's face flushed. A few nearby guests froze, conversations dying mid-sentence. The quartet missed a beat, then recovered. Adrian turned to Olivia, eyes locked on hers. That's what I should have said the first time. The second time. Every time. I'm sorry it took me this long. Olivia's throat tightened. She squeezed his hand, once hard, then released it. Thank you, she whispered. But her voice cracked on the next words. It's not enough to say it once. I need to know it's permanent. I can't keep waiting for the next room where you choose silence. Adrian's expression shifted, pain flashing across his features. What are you saying? I'm saying, I'm tired. Tears welled again, but she didn't wipe them away this time. Tired of bending, tired of hoping you'll choose me when it counts. I love you, Adrian, but I love myself more. And right now, staying feels like losing her. She turned before he could respond. Heels clicked fast across the teak, sharp, decisive. She wove through stunned guests, past the glowing pools, toward the stern where the gangplank waited. The yacht's lights cast long shadows behind her. The ocean roared louder as she neared the edge. Adrian stood frozen for 2 heartbeats, long enough to feel the world tilt. Then realization hit like cold water. If she walked down that ramp, she might never walk back up. He moved. Olivia. His voice cracked across the deck, raw, stripped of every layer of composure. Guests parted instinctively. He ran, suit jacket flapping, tie askew, polished shoes slipping slightly on the smooth wood. Lights overhead threw dramatic pools of gold and black, shadows stretched and twisted with every stride. The ocean's roar filled his ears, waves crashing against the hull like applause for the unraveling. She reached the gangplank first, wide enough for two, steep enough to feel final. She paused at the top, one hand on the rail, breathing hard. The dock below waited dark and empty. Adrian skidded to a stop a few feet away, chest heaving. "Don't go, please." She turned slowly. Tears streaked her face, the emerald gown fluttered in the wind. "Give me one reason to stay that isn't another apology." He took a step closer. "Because I'm terrified of a life without you. Not because of what I lose, but because of what I become. I was half alive before you, chasing numbers, collecting wins, pretending control meant safety. You showed me safety as someone who sees all of me and stays anyway. If you leave, that man disappears. I disappear." His voice broke on the last word. He dropped to both knees, hard enough that the impact echoed faintly against the deck. No ceremony, no audience play, just surrender. "I built walls to keep pain out," he said, looking up at her. "They kept everything good out too. You walked through them without trying. Your honesty, your courage, your refusal to let me hide. I need that. I need you, not to fix me, to remind me who I can be when I stop hiding." Tears slipped down his cheeks now, unashamed, unchecked. Guests gathered at a respectful distance, murmuring. The quartet had stopped entirely. Only the ocean spoke. Olivia's breath caught. She knelt too, slowly, knees meeting the cool teak so their faces aligned. "You hurt me tonight. You hurt me before. Every time you chose the room over me, a piece of trust broke. I know. But you're here, on your knees, in front of everyone, saying the things you've never said out loud, because I finally understand what I'll lose if I don't." She reached out, thumbs brushing the tears from his face. "Love isn't supposed to feel like a performance. It's supposed to feel like home. I want home with you, but I won't settle for half of you. You won't have to." His hands found hers, trembling but steady. "I choose you every day, every room, every time it's hard. I'll stumble, I'll need reminding, but I won't stop trying." The yacht rocked on a gentle swell. Lights swayed overhead. The crowd watched in hushed silence, some moved, some uncomfortable, all witnesses to something rare. Olivia searched his eyes, searching for the man she had fallen for in quiet moments, the one who listened to her drafts, who danced in empty rooms, who held her through doubt. She found him there, raw and exposed. She leaned forward, forehead resting against his. "Then stand up," she whispered. "Stand up with me. Not for them, for us." He rose, drawing her up with him. They stood chest to chest, hands clasped tight. The wind whipped her hair across his face. He brushed it away gently. Then he kissed her, slow, deep, desperate in the best way. Not a performance, a promise. When they parted, foreheads still touching, he spoke against her lips. "I love you, all of you, always." "I love you too," she answered. "But love means showing up. Every time, I will." The emotional surge crested, desperation giving way to fragile, hard-won hope. The storm had broken open the last barriers between them. Trust remained bruised. Healing would take time. But in that moment, on the deck of a yacht that suddenly felt small against the vast sea, they chose each other again. Guests began to applaud, soft at first, then stronger. Someone whistled. The quartet struck up again, a brighter melody this time. The night shifted. The air felt lighter. They walked back toward the main deck, hand in hand, slow, deliberate. No rush to explain, no need to perform. Just two people who had survived the storm and emerged closer. The relationship wasn't fixed. It was cracked open, honest, vulnerable, real. The true work of rebuilding lay ahead, but for now, they held on. And that was enough. The applause from the scattered guests faded into the background hum of the ocean and the quartet's renewed melody. Adrian and Olivia stood at the center of the upper deck, hands still clasped, foreheads touching, breathing in the same salt-laced air. The yacht's lights cast soft halos around them. Shadows danced across the teak with every gentle roll of the hull. Neither spoke for a long moment. The weight of what had just happened settled between them, not crushing but grounding. Olivia broke the silence first. "You meant every word down there." "Every one," Adrian answered. His voice was rough from shouting her name, from the tears he hadn't tried to hide. "I've spent too long measuring worth in numbers and titles. Tonight I finally saw what actually matters. You, us, the man I want to be when I'm with you." She lifted her head, studying him in the low light. "I forgive you, Adrian. Not because it erases the hurt, because I believe you're ready to stop repeating it." He exhaled, shoulders dropping as if a long-held tension finally released. "I don't deserve that yet, but I'll earn it, starting now." They moved to a quieter corner near the stern rail, away from curious eyes. The city lights of Los Angeles glittered far off on the horizon like scattered jewels. Olivia leaned against the railing. Adrian stood beside her, close enough that their arms brushed. "I'm sorry," he said again, slower this time, deliberate. "For every time I laughed instead of speaking up, for every event where you felt like an accessory instead of my equal, for letting fear of losing control cost you pieces of yourself. I see it now. I see how much it cost us both." Olivia nodded. Apology accepted. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means trusting you'll choose differently next time." "I will." He turned to face her fully. No more polite deflections. No more choosing the room over you. If someone dismisses your work, I'll correct them. If someone reduces you, I'll walk out with you. I promise. She searched his face. "And when the empire pulls, when a board meeting or investor dinner demands the old version of you, then I delegate. I say no. I protect what we have." He took both her hands. "You've shown me that real strength isn't control, it's vulnerability, letting someone see the cracks and trusting they won't use them against you. I want that with you. Every day." Olivia's eyes softened. "I want it too, but I need to promise you something as well. I've been bending so far to fit your world that I almost lost my own voice. From now on, I speak up sooner. I don't wait until I'm breaking. I don't shrink to keep peace. We both grow, or we don't grow together. Deal," he said quietly. "Mutual growth. No conformity. Just us, honest, messy, real." They sealed the promise with a kiss, slow, steady, the kind that carried weight rather than heat. When they parted, Olivia rested her head on his shoulder. The yacht rocked gently. The sea whispered against the hull. The party continued around them, laughter, clinking glasses, music, but it felt distant now. They stayed on the deck until the last guests began to disembark, then walked down the gangplank together, hand in hand, no rush to explain themselves to anyone. The next morning, they woke in Adrian's penthouse. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. No alarms, no urgent calls. Adrian made coffee while Olivia sat at the kitchen island in one of his shirts, notebook open in front of her. They ate breakfast slowly, fresh fruit, toast, quiet conversation about nothing and everything. "I'm cancelling the Singapore trip next month," he said, setting his mug down. "They can handle it without me. I'd rather be here for your press meeting Monday." Olivia looked up. "You don't have to." "I want to." He reached across the island, covered her hand with his. "I want to be in the room when you get good news, or when you get tough feedback. I want to celebrate with you, not read about it later." Tears pricked her eyes, not from pain this time, but from the simple relief of being chosen. "Thank you." Changes came steadily, not in dramatic sweeps, but in daily choices. Adrian began delegating more aggressively. He promoted 2 trusted executives to handle day-to-day operations, freeing entire days each week. Board meetings shortened, travel reduced. He kept the penthouse but spent more nights in her Brooklyn studio, sleeping on the narrow bed, waking to the sound of her typing instead of stock alerts. The yacht stayed docked most weekends. They preferred quiet drives to upstate cabins or long walks along the Hudson. Olivia's press meeting went well. The small publisher offered a contract, modest advance, but full creative control. Adrian was there in the lobby afterward, arms open when she walked out smiling. They celebrated with takeout pizza on her fire escape, reading the offer letter aloud like it was poetry. He attended her first reading after the deal was signed, a small Brooklyn bookstore, 30 chairs, folding table with wine in plastic cups. He sat in the front row, listened to every word, asked thoughtful questions during Q&A. When someone in the back asked if her stories were autobiographical, he smiled quietly from his seat. No interruption, just pride in his eyes. Intimacy deepened in the aftermath. Mornings became slower, coffee in bed, her reading drafts while he traced patterns on her back. Evenings ended with slow dances in the living room. No music sometimes, just the rhythm of their breathing. Physical closeness carried new tenderness, fingers laced during walks, forehead kisses before sleep, bodies fitting together with the ease of long practice. They talked through doubts openly, no more waiting until frustration boiled over. When fear surfaced, they named it, held it together, let it pass. Months passed. Winter gave way to spring again. Adrian scaled back his public appearances. Olivia's novel released to quiet but growing acclaim, reviews praising its honesty, readers writing to say her words helped them feel less alone. They found balance. Her world in Brooklyn cafes and late-night writing sessions, his in strategic meetings and occasional galas where he now brought her as equal, not accessory. One quiet Sunday in May, they drove to a secluded beach north of the city. No yacht, no staff, just sand, waves, and a blanket spread under a driftwood log. They sat shoulder to shoulder, watching the tide come in. Adrian spoke first. "I used to think wealth was measured in zeros, bank accounts, valuations, headlines. I was wrong." Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder. "What is it measured in now? In moments like this, in the person beside me who sees every crack and stays, in the courage it takes to be vulnerable instead of perfect, in the regret I felt that night on the deck, and the redemption that came from facing it head-on." She turned to look at him. "Regret isn't the enemy, it's the teacher. It shows us what we value most by showing us what we almost lost." He nodded. "True wealth is in relationships that survive the truth. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the foundation that holds everything else up. And regret, when we let it, becomes the catalyst that turns us toward what really matters." They sat in silence after that, watching the sun lower toward the water. No need for more words. The lessons had settled deep. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tag a friend below and subscribe so we can keep these lessons coming. Let's spread the reminder that real love chooses growth over comfort, honesty over ease, and each other over everything else. Years later, they married on that same beach at dawn. No guests except close family. No extravagance except the ocean and the sky. Vows were simple. Promises to keep choosing each other, to keep growing, to keep showing up. Adrian whispered against her ear as the sun rose. "You taught me what wealth really is." Olivia smiled, hand in his. "We taught each other how to live it." In a world obsessed with status and surface, their story became quiet proof. The greatest riches are found in hearts that mend through truth, vulnerability, and relentless choice. Years passed like pages turning in a book neither of them had planned to write together. The wedding happened on a quiet stretch of beach north of Santa Barbara, the same one where they had once sat watching the tide come in after the yacht night. Dawn light painted the sky soft pink and gold. Waves rolled in steady and low. No orchestra, no guest list of hundreds, no photographers circling for shots. Just 20 people, Olivia's parents from Brooklyn, Adrian's sister, and her family from Indiana, a handful of close friends who had watched their story unfold from the beginning. Sand under bare feet, a simple wooden arch draped with white flowers, the ocean as witness. Olivia wore a cream linen dress that moved with the breeze, hair loose and caught by salt air. Adrian stood in a light grey suit, sleeves rolled, no tie, simple, open, the way she had always preferred him. They faced each other on a small rise of dune grass, hands joined, rings already exchanged in private the night before, plain gold bands engraved inside with the date of the yacht party and 3 words, "Choose each other always." The officiant, Olivia's father, spoke briefly about love as a daily decision, not a destination. Then he stepped back. Adrian spoke first. "I used to think success was measured in what I could build and hold on to," he said, voice carrying over the waves. "I was wrong. Success is measured in who stands beside me when the building stops mattering. Olivia, you saw the cracks I tried to hide and loved me through them. You taught me that vulnerability isn't a liability, it's the only way to stay connected. I promise to keep choosing you, every morning, every hard conversation, every time fear tells me to stay silent. I promise to grow with you, not ahead of you or behind you. I promise to listen, to stand up, to be the man who runs toward you instead of away." Olivia smiled through tears that caught the sunrise. "Adrian, you showed up when I needed someone to believe my voice mattered. You learned to sit with my doubts instead of fixing them. You chose me when it was uncomfortable, and that choice changed everything. I promise to keep showing up as myself, no shrinking, no pretending. I promise to speak my truth even when it's hard. I promise to grow beside you, to hold space for your fears the way you hold mine. I promise we'll keep choosing each other, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it." They kissed as the first full light broke over the water, slow, certain, witnessed only by the people who loved them most and the endless sea. No fireworks, no grand exit. Just hands clasped, steps together down the sand, laughter rising as friends surrounded them with hugs and quiet congratulations. Life after the wedding settled into a rhythm that felt earned. They kept 2 homes. The Brooklyn studio Olivia refused to give up, her writing desk still pushed against the window overlooking the fire escape, and a modest house on the California coast where Adrian could hear the ocean from every room. He stepped away from daily operations at Sterling Energy, handing leadership to a team he trusted. The company thrived without him in the spotlight. He consulted when needed, but his calendar now held long, empty stretches for the things that mattered most. Olivia's novel found its readers. Reviews called it quietly revolutionary, and a love letter to authenticity. Letters arrived from strangers, people who said her words gave them courage to leave relationships that asked them to shrink, or to speak up in rooms that once silenced them. She started teaching small writing workshops in community centers, sharing what she had learned, that vulnerability on the page builds the same muscle it takes to be vulnerable in love. Their days filled with ordinary joys. Mornings began with coffee on the porch, her reading aloud from whatever she was working on while he listened, asked questions, offered thoughts without trying to steer. Afternoons often meant walks along the beach, barefoot, hands linked, talking through ideas or simply staying quiet. Evenings ended with slow dances in the living room, or curled on the couch with books and blankets, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her arm. Intimacy stayed deep and unhurried. They made love with the windows open to the sound of waves, bodies moving in the familiar rhythm of people who knew each other's scars and still chose closeness. When doubt surfaced, old fears of losing themselves, they talked them through before they grew roots. No more waiting for breaking points. They caught the cracks early and mended them together. Adrian often reflected on the yacht night. "I almost lost you because I was too afraid to lose face," he said one evening as they watched the sunset from their deck. "Regret hit me like a wave that night. But it didn't drown me. It woke me up." Olivia nodded. "Regret can be a teacher if we let it. It shows us what we truly value by showing us what we're willing to fight for." That chase across the deck wasn't just desperation. It was the moment you chose healing over hiding. They prioritized the real over the flashy. No more galas where conversation stayed surface level. No more gifts meant to solve problems that needed presence instead. They traveled light, weekends in small towns, quiet dinners with friends, long drives with no destination. Wealth, they agreed, wasn't measured in accounts or assets. It lived in the mornings they woke up beside each other, in the trust built through honest words, in the courage to be seen fully and still be loved. Years later, on the 10th anniversary of the yacht party, They returned to that same beach at dawn. No ceremony this time, just the two of them, a thermos of coffee, a blanket spread on the sand. They sat shoulder to shoulder, watching the sky lighten. Adrian spoke softly. In a world chasing status, the greatest stories are the ones where hearts heal each other. Olivia leaned into him, where people choose vulnerability over victory, growth over comfort, each other over everything else. They stayed until the sun climbed high, then walked back to the car hand in hand. No rush, no agenda, just the quiet certainty that they had built something lasting. If this story moved you like if it inspired you, comment your biggest takeaway below. What one lesson from their journey hit you hardest? And subscribe, plus turn on the bell so you never miss the next Lord of Hearts tale. These stories are for anyone who believes love can teach us how to live better, heal deeper, and choose more bravely. Thank you for staying with us through this journey, from the storm on the deck to the quiet dawn of forever.